I'm in your presence. I want to hear from you. I've been running through this week, through this month, last whole year. I need rest. And therefore, Lord, I've come to your feet. Speak to my heart this morning. Let nothing come between your voice and my ears, your voice and my heart. Help me to be still in your presence this morning. Let there be no distractions, Lord. You have the words of eternal life. Where else can I go? You're your people. This is your church. This is your word. Speak to us, for I ask in Jesus' name. Amen. I do not seek what is yours, but you. I do not seek what is yours, but you. Two men were marooned on an island, and this one man, he just kept pacing back and forth, back and forth, worried about how is he going to get back home. And suddenly he looks at this other guy who is just simply sitting and sunning himself. And he asks this guy, aren't you worried we are ever going to get back home? He said, no, not really. He's like, but why? He said, look, the thing is, I'll tell you, I make $100,000 a week and I tithe faithfully. And I'm dead sure that my pastor will find me. I do not seek what is yours, but you. I do not seek what is yours, but you. This profound statement, this absolutely profound statement Paul made in his second letter to Corinthians in chapter 12. Paul understood that the matter of giving is not the matter of hand, but it is the matter of heart. You know, someone has said a giving church is a healthy church. Well, I almost agree with that statement because I firmly believe that you can be faithful in your giving without being faithful to the Lord. You can be faithful. Your giving might be regular, but your heart might not be with the Lord. But if your heart is with the Lord, your money will follow. If your heart is with the Lord, your money will follow. For example, Pharisees, very meticulous, very detailed in their giving. They knew the Torah by heart, the book of the law. They had to recite it day after day after day. And when it came to obey the law and be faithful to the law, they were matchless. They knew how much to give, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, 7 years, 50 years. They knew how much exactly to give, and they were very faithful. They would never compromise on their giving. But the sad part was that their hearts were far away from the Lord. Jesus says in Matthew 23:23, he says, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You know how much to tithe from your dill, your mint, and cumin, but you have left aside the weightier matters of the law. Faithfulness, justice, mercy. Jesus is saying that you know how much to tithe. You know even how much to tithe from your spices, but you have left matters like faith, matters like justice, matters like mercy aside. What Jesus is trying to say that you can give to the Lord without being faithful to the Lord. You can give to the Lord faithfully without loving the Lord your God and without loving your neighbor. Giving can be a discipline without it being a spiritual discipline. And I believe a lot of us are there at this moment. A lot of us. For us, giving is a matter of auto debit. For us, giving is a matter of post-dated checks. For us, matter of giving is cash transaction only. Giving for some of us is a very traditional discipline, a very pharisaical, legalistic sort of a discipline, but it is not a spiritual discipline. Because anything that is a spiritual discipline contributes towards the satisfaction, towards the contentment, towards the growth and maturing of the spirit. And I want you all to pause this morning for a second and think, has your giving helping you, or is your giving helping you grow spiritually mature? When the offering bag was passed around, when you were putting money in, or when you gave your tithes or offering, whatever, this month or last year, did it really excite you? Did it really boost your faith? Did it make you depend on the Lord more? I want to talk about giving as a spiritual discipline today. I want to talk about the heart behind giving. I don't want to focus on giving, how much to give, etc., etc. I don't want to focus on that. I want to talk about the grace of giving. We are in a series called Spiritual Disciplines. Last week we looked at the spiritual discipline of rest. The Sabbath rest is good. Today we're going to look at money, giving, not so much money, then we're going to talk about prayer and service. And I want to explore three things today. I want to look at a passage and I want to explore three things. First thing I want to explore is how should we give? The manner of giving. The manner of giving. Second thing I want to explore is why should we give? The motivation behind giving. And third, I want to delve into a bit of practical aspects. Where do I start? Where do I start? So manner, motivation, and where do I start? So how should we give? The manner of giving. Let's turn to our passage today. It's 2 Corinthians chapter 8. We'll be looking at verses 1 to 9. 2 Corinthians chapter 8. Before you while you flip your pages, let me just give you a bit of background to this letter. This is the second letter that Paul has written to the church in Corinth. Paul has been dealing with some severe theological issues that could possibly result in a church split and factions that are already created. Apart from that, Paul is also defending his apostolic authority. He's the apostle. He planted the church at the city of Corinth, and he has to now defend his authority over that church. But now he comes to chapter 8. And in chapter 8, he is reminding the Corinthians that you committed, and you see that in 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 1 and 2. He says that you have committed to help the saints in Jerusalem to fulfill their needs. They're in dire need. They need some finances, and you had committed that you would help them. It's time now for you to fulfill your commitment. I'm not able to come, but I'm sending Titus. He's a faithful friend. He's a faithful servant of God. He is coming, so you better collect and give your commitment to him so that he can bring it back and possibly I can take it to Jerusalem. And while he is doing that, he gives an exemplary example of giving. He presents to them a case study. And he gives them this example of exemplary giving. So let's go into our passage today. Verse 1. Paul says, we want you to know, brothers, about the grace of God that has been given among the churches of Macedonia. That's the case study, churches of Macedonia. What Paul is saying that I want you to know, brothers, Corinthians, how God blessed them with abundance of grace in order for them to give. Why? Verse 2. For in your severe test of affliction, their abundance of joy and their extreme poverty have overflowed in a wealth of generosity on their part. You see, Paul is using two paradoxical statements here. Two contradictory statements here, two contradictory realities. He's saying that their severe affliction has resulted in abundance of joy. Two realities that don't go together in our world. If affliction is present, joy is missing. If joy is present, affliction is missing. And the second paradoxical statement he makes is that their extreme poverty has resulted in the wealth of generosity. Now the word extreme there, most of your Bibles translate that word as extreme, but that word actually is the word deep. If you see the Greek word, it's actually the word deep. Deep as in ocean deep. It's the same word that Paul uses in 1 Corinthians chapter 2 to describe the depths of God. So what Paul is talking about when he says about extreme poverty, he is actually talking about their severe economical condition. What he is trying to say, man, those Macedonian churches, they're deep in poverty. They're deep in poverty. They're absolutely poor. And when Paul is talking about these Macedonian churches, he's talking about three churches. He's talking about the church at Philippi. He's talking about the church at Thessalonica. And he's talking about the church at Berea. Now, if you read Acts chapter 16 to Acts chapter 18, you see Paul visiting all three cities. First, the city of Philippi, the city of Thessalonica, and the city of Berea. And you see that Paul faced extreme opposition in all these three cities. In the city of Philippi, he was beaten with rods and he was thrown out. And he almost gotten beaten in the other two cities as well. So you can imagine the Christians who are living in those cities, how much hardships they are facing. Their severe physical condition and their ostracization and extreme poverty could be a result of these hardships. Verse 3, Paul says, he said they not only gave, if you read verse 3, he says, they not only gave out of their ability, but they gave beyond their ability. Beyond their ability. Despite of being so poor, they gave beyond their ability, beyond their means, beyond their livelihood. So the first characteristics of a generous heart is that it gives sacrificially. First characteristic of a generous heart is that it gives sacrificially. When you give sacrificially, you don't give because your income allows you to. When you give sacrificially, you don't give because your income allows you to. You give even when your bottom line says, don't give. You give when it doesn't even make sense for you to give. And you see the example of such giving in scriptures. You see a lot of examples of such giving, sacrificial giving in the scriptures. Jesus, looking at this old woman in Luke chapter 21, he looks at the woman who's brought 2 copper coins. She puts it in the offering bag. Jesus says, man, she's given more than anyone else because she has given all that she had to live on. And then the classic example of Acts chapter 2, Acts chapter 4, everything that people have, they have brought in, they have sold everything so that all the needs are met. You see, when you give sacrificially, you don't ask the question, how much should I give? You ask the question, how much should I keep? Or how much do I really need? Do you see the difference? How much should I give versus how much do I need and how much do I actually keep? It means not just to do away with your luxuries, but to do away with some of your necessities. Probably avoiding to go to restaurants every now and then. Avoiding ordering in every now and then. Trying not to eat meat every day. How will that happen? Not buying everything on Amazon and Flipkart. Not going to Starbucks every day and spending 300 rupees on a cup of coffee. Etc., etc. You don't ask the question, how much do I give? But how much should I keep? It's radical. It's radical. If your giving costs you nothing, then it means nothing. If your giving costs you nothing, then it means nothing. So the first characteristic of a generous heart is that it gives sacrificially. The second characteristic of a generous heart is that it gives volitionally, out of your own volition, out of your own will. Verse 3. Paul says, I can testify, and beyond their means they gave, of their own accord. Verse 4, begging us earnestly for the favor of taking part in the relief of the saints. Paul is saying, I didn't go asking them for money. They urged me. They came after me. They said, Paul, we urge you. They literally begged me, Paul, take our money. We can identify with those brothers and sisters in Jerusalem who are in need. We can identify they're also going through hardships. And I think our money will do them good. That's fine. We're going through extreme conditions. But Lord is our provider. Take our money. You see, when we give volitionally, no one literally has to coax us or blackmail us to give. Our giving is not a result of a convicting sermon. Our giving is not a result of a series of on wealth management, or nobody has to literally ply it out of our hands. A sacrificial or a generous heart gives because it wants to, not because it has to. Gives because it wants to, not because it has to. Paul knew perhaps that if he would ask the Macedonians to give, it'll be burdensome for them. It'll be burdensome. But they're like, Paul, man, don't limit us. Have a heart. Give us the opportunity to partake in this abundance of joy that is available in sharing with our brothers and sisters in Christ. Please give us that opportunity. We beg you, give us that opportunity. Mind you, this passage is not talking about tithing. This passage is not talking about your regular offering, what you just did. This is a special project. This is a one-time giving. This is over and above their regular giving. And all these people are getting worked up about this. Tithes and offerings are they're out of question. Okay, they've committed their lives to that. That's even out of question. What they're actually grumpy about is the fact that Paul didn't ask them to give. See, whether it is sacrificial giving or volitional giving, there's some kind of a joy in it. It gives you some kind of a kick. It gives you some kind of a high. Because what is happening when you give out of your poverty, when you give more than you can afford, when you give, when your bottom line says, don't give, you're telling God, God, you meet my needs. You are my provider, not my organization, not my business. You are my provider. I am giving this money off to this brother. He needs it more than I do right now. I have these needs. Will you please fulfill my needs? And while God is laying on your heart to meet this brother's need, God is laying on someone else's heart as well to meet your need. And when that comes through, you're like, wow, how did that happen? And when you experience that, you're like, God, I want more of this experience. I want more of it, Lord. I want to experience your power. I want to experience your grace more and more and more and more in my life. It becomes an addiction in your life. You can't live without it. You're like, Lord, I need this. I need this experience in my life. And you start stretching your boundaries. 10%, 20%, 30%. Lord, I want to do more. 40%, 50%, 60%. And then you join full-time ministry. Why did Macedonians give, despite of their extreme poverty? Why did that woman put 2 coins, all she had, in the offering bank? What was the motivation that these people in Jerusalem in Acts chapter 4 or 2 had to give away everything they had? For what joy? For what joy? That brings us to our second point. Why should we give? The motivation. The motivation. You see, there are 2 primary reasons why people give. The first reason that people give is out of tradition. Out of tradition that borders on legalism. Everyone has been giving in my family, so I give. And you see their giving, that actually goes down to decimals. Why? Because that's how it has been happening. It's basically a tick in the box. It's not a spiritual discipline. It does no good to your spirit. The only thing that giving does is that it keeps you guilt-free. Because the month you don't give, you feel guilty. You feel under the mountain of guilt. And that guilt is not the result of the realization that you have not given to the Lord. You've not given to His work. The guilt is out of the realization that you have broken your tradition. People give out of tradition. People give out of fear or obligation. I need to give, otherwise the Lord will strike me down. I will be the Hophni and Phinehas of Old Testament and the Ananias and Sapphira of New Testament. I need to give. Lord will strike me down. I need to give because if I don't give, Lord will not prosper me. Or if I don't give, something or the other will go wrong in my life for that month. And you see, the devil, Satan, he knows our psyche. He knows that we think we are wired or not wired. We are thinking in this way. And what he does, the month that you don't give, he actually makes sure something goes wrong and then he makes you connect the dots. You're like, remember? I told you. I told you this will happen. The danger in that is that we cheapen grace. We bring grace down to a transaction. We start believing that God's faithfulness is dependent on my faithfulness. We nullify grace. We trample grace under our feet. You see, there are other religions, other faiths that ask of its people to give as mandatory giving. There are some faiths that actually ask their people to give 10%. There are some faiths who ask their people to give more than 10%. And people give. People still give. People give out of tradition. People give out of fear. People give out of obligation. And if us and we, the community of God, the people of God, if we are also doing the same thing, if we are giving out of the same motivation, then what is the difference between this community of God, the so-called people of God who have inherited His name? What is the difference between us and the others? What is our motivation, or what should be our motivation? Verse 9. Jump to verse 9. For you know, Corinthians, the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though He was rich, yet for your sake He became poor, so that you by His poverty might become rich. Paul, what do you mean by that? Please pause it for us. Please explain it to us. What do you really mean by that? What Paul is trying to say that Jesus Christ, He owns every iota of this universe. Every ounce of this universe He owns. Everything that we see, He owns. Everything that we don't see is still under His sovereign rule. He is rich beyond all measure. But all of it, all of this He kept aside. He emptied Himself. Paul says in Philippians, He emptied Himself and took on frail humanity that is decaying, deteriorating, sinful, and weak. He took on humanity. He became His own creation. And not only that, He died the death of the cross. All alone. Even despised and forsaken by His Father. That was the extent of His poverty. All of it, so that when you and I will believe in Him, when you and I will put our faith in Him, we will inherit a name that is beyond all names. A name that is the richest name in this entire universe. We will be adopted in a family that is rich beyond all measure. We will inherit an inheritance that is just magnificent, grand beyond all measure. It's like Bill Gates looking for the poorest of the poorest village in the world, and he goes and he looks for the poorest family in that village, and in that family he looks at the most malnourished kid and he says to that kid, today I have become your father, you have become my child, come. And the Macedonians got that. They got that. They understood the grace of God. Their hearts were filled with gratefulness, with gratitude. Gratitude is the motivation. Nothing else. Gratefulness to what the Lord has done. And Paul says in verse 5, going back to verse 5, Paul says, as a result of this knowledge, they not only gave of their possessions, they not only gave of themselves, but they gave themselves. Read that, it's there in verse 5. He says, first, they gave themselves to the Lord. Wow, that's amazing. And he says later on, then by the will of God, they gave themselves to us. First, to the Lord. First doesn't mean time. First means the order of priority. Lord first, and then everything else. Everything else. They got it. They understood it. Their hearts were filled with gratitude, and that's why they were able to give the way they give. Out of their extreme poverty, out of their abundance of joy. They're like, Lord, it's all yours. And the only appropriate response to the grace of God is complete surrender. Complete surrender out of a grateful heart. A heart that is ready to relinquish everything. All rights, all possessions. And when the Lord calls and says, I desire you, the heart says, Lord, I am yours. I am yours. Giving is not a matter of hand or of wallet or of your bank account. It's a matter of heart. It's the matter of heart. Paul puts this example of radical giving in front of an affluent, rich city church in Corinth. And he says, look at these Macedonians. They'd give beyond their means. Can you? Can you? Can you do it? He says. Can you do it? How much should I give? Where do I start? Practical. Where do I start? You see, there is no one-size-fit-all equation here. There's no formula there. We all don't earn similar amounts. So I think good place to start is tithing. Good place to start is tithing, but tithing is not an end. It is just beginning. Tithing is not an end. Tithing is just a beginning, a means to an end. But Pastor, in Old Testament, it is just 10%. It's tithing. Well, we need to read the Old Testament correctly then. Old Testament talks about 3 kinds of tithing. 2 are annual tithing. The third one is actually the tithing that is once in 3 years. And if you put all 3 of them together, it comes up to about 23 to 25%, not just 10%. But tithe is part of a law, and Jesus has fulfilled the law. It's not the New Testament language. New Testament language is grace giving. What about that? Well, yeah. Last week we talked about Jesus has fulfilled the law. I mean, all the requirements of the law have been fulfilled by Jesus. They are therefore stand nullified. But Sabbath rest is still a good principle. In the same way, tithing is also a good principle, but I don't believe in it. I'm a New Testament believer. Well, great. Then go back to your last year's giving statement if you have a record of it and see if it is crossing 10% or not. If it is, then great. But if it is not, then there's a problem. Why? Because if people of the Old Testament who did not witness or see or could read the full extent of God's love that He showed on the cross, and we who have seen it, people of Old Testament still could give 23 to 25%. And if we who have been recipient of God's full extent of love, how much more should we give? But Paul says in 2 Corinthians chapter 9, each man should give as he has decided on in his heart. Well, yeah, My heart might just decide to give 5%. Lord should be okay with it because that's what I've decided cheerfully. And Lord loves a cheerful giver. But Paul is not talking in the context of tithing and offering. Again, he is tithing in the context of one-time giving. One-time giving. Who should I give my tithes to? Should I give it to the church? Should I give it to the poor outside? Should I give it to somebody who's in need? Well, I certainly believe there is a pecking order. Malachi chapter 3 verse 10, God says, bring the entire tithe to my storehouse. Bring it to my storehouse. And I believe in that. I believe that your first giving, your first fruits should go to the Lord. Then the pecking order is if you see the needs around you, in your church, in your family, in your community, even at your workplace, give. And third, to the missions at large. To the missions at large. I can't afford to give generously because I am neck down or head deep in debts. Credit cards, home loan, car loan, this loan, that loan. How much? How can I give? How can I give? Well, if you can't give while you're in debts, you can't give when you're out of debts. Very honestly. Because it's a discipline. Whether you are giving when you are in debts or you're outside debts, you are telling God, I am trusting in you. I am giving this much. You meet my needs. And trust me, He will. I'm not preaching prosperity gospel here that you give and Lord will give you. I'm telling you out of experience. Lord honors it. When you put Him first in your life, first in order of priority, He honors it. I'm sure Macedonian churches won't have asked so many questions. But we ask, a lot of us ask those questions because they knew that Lord wants them. He is after their heart, not their wallet. He is after their heart. He desires or He seeks them. And when you realize that, when your heart is filled with gratitude for the Lord, and when you give yourself totally for the Lord, for the work of the Lord, parting with possessions is not difficult. Trust me, God still calls you to be a good steward. That's a different message altogether. God still calls you to be a good steward of what He has entrusted to you. So the question really to ask this morning is your heart filled with gratitude? Is your heart filled with gratitude for the Lord? And if no, then I think it's time to visit the cross again. It's probably time for you to watch the Passion of Christ again. What sort of a church do we want to be? When people use our case studies, what do we want to be remembered as? People who gave themselves? Or people who give a little bit out of their wallets? Good question to ask. Let's pray.